Hey guys, June here, and this is going to be a really quick video to try and help illustrate what I've probably had thousands of conversations about in the years that I've been playing RuneScape, and that is conceptualizing the idea of efficiency. This principle comes pretty naturally to a lot of people, but some people struggle with it, and I've had the same conversation over and over, and no matter how I seem to explain it, people don't seem to conceptualize it well, so I thought putting it into a visual format might help. I'll do two quick examples, one for skilling and one for PVM, and that second one will probably help illustrate why I also have what seems like it might be an obsession with doing a maximum DPS. So let's start off with a quick thought experiment. Let's say we want to gain some cooking experience, and we've narrowed it down to two possible strategies for training. On one hand, we can make some ghetto grilled cheese, and we'll get about 100,000 experience an hour, and that costs us about 1 mil per hour, at an average rate of about 10 GP per XP. Alternatively, we could make some fancy-ass cupcakes and get 300,000 experience per hour, but that's going to cost us 9 mil GP per hour, and that's an average of 30 GP per XP cost. I think where people get stuck is this is as far as they're willing to take their analysis, so they compare the average GP per XP rates and they see, whoa, it's going to cost me 3 times as much for the same amount of XP to do the cupcake method. That's definitely not worth doing. The trouble is this calculation is done in a vacuum, and so we have to employ something that is generally called time versus cost, or TVC for short. Basically, we need to come up with what we value our time as based on what our best money-making strategies are. Just to continue this particular example, Araxor is something that I think probably 95% of RuneScape players can handle with a little bit of practice, and solo kills tend to average between 10 and 15 mil profit per hour. So let's change things up a bit and try and compare these methods in a different way. To start with, we'll do the grilled cheese method, the cheap and cost-effective way of training, for 2 hours. For each of those 2 hours, we'll gain 100,000 experience and we'll lose 1 mil GP as we discussed earlier. That gives us a total of 200,000 experience gained and 2 million GP lost for an average rate of 10 GP per XP. But for our second strategy, we're going to take 1 hour of our more expensive but faster second method plus 1 hour of our maximum profit strategy. That first hour of training will get us a total of 300,000 experience and we'll lose a total of 9 million GP. Then for our second hour, we're just going to head to Araxor and try and recuperate as much money as possible. Obviously this is just an average, but I went on the low end of what people would generally consider to be average profit from Araxor, and so we're going to assume that we make about 10 million GP. If we add all this up, we can see that we not only got 100,000 more XP than we got using the first method, but we actually made a total of 1 million GP profit, and overall for these 2 hours we made an average of 3.33 GP per XP profit rather than the 10 GP per XP loss. When you look at it from this perspective, it often becomes very quickly obvious that you should often go for the more expensive but faster methods of training. I know to a good portion of you, me explaining this is like telling you that the sky is blue, but you have to remember that a lot of people don't think about these things intuitively. Now let's take a quick look at a really simplified version of a PVM example using the same example of Araxor that we were from earlier. We're just going to make a simple comparison between using a scrimshaw and not using a scrimshaw because people would generally consider that to be probably one of the most expendable pieces of gear that generally wouldn't be worth using if you're trying to make money at a boss, for example. So for our example on the left, we won't be using a scrimshaw, and we're going to ignore all of the other gear costs since we'll be using everything else in exactly the same way in the right example with the addition of the scrimshaw as well, so we're expecting an average of about 10 mil profit. On the right, we have that same 10 mil profit per hour, but then we need to remove the amount that the scrimshaw is going to cost us per hour. If you were choosing not to use those ancient bones to make yourself a scrimshaw, you could instead make a tradable version and sell it for 1.8 mil. They last for 4 hours, so that's an average of about 450k cost per hour of use. Obviously that's generalized since you would be turning it off between kills, but this is assuming a worst case scenario where you left it running for the full hour. However, that scrimshaw provides you with 6.66% extra DPS, which means 6.66% more kills per hour and thus more loot. We can apply that to our simple flat 10 mil profit per hour average, and that's going to give us on average about 666k extra profit per hour as contributed by the extra DPS from that scrimshaw. When you do all the math out, you can see that even though a scrimshaw is relatively expensive to use, it causes a net overall increase in our total profit, even completely ignoring things like improved experience from getting more frequent kills. It's for these reasons that I will almost always be encouraging you to use the absolute best DPS items that you have in almost any scenario. I can't even begin to describe how frustrating it is to hear friends tell me that it's too expensive to use overloads or turmoil prayers on Slayer tasks, for example, when you actually do the math out, they would be making significantly more money as well as getting more experience if they were doing that. Again, I know this comes very naturally to a lot of you guys, but not to everyone, and keep this in mind if you have friends who might be efficiency challenged. This should hopefully be a good way of visually describing what we're getting at. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. See you in the next video.